Russian annexation of Crimea by Victoria and Tristan. In 1783, Catherine the Great annexed Crimea from the Ottoman Empire, but when Russia signed the Treaty of Paris in 1856, accepting defeat in the Crimean War, it agreed to dismantle its naval base in the capital Crimea. These were the terms demanded by Britain, France, and their allies, who wanted to eliminate Russia as a military threat in the Black Sea. However, in 1870, during the Franco-Persian War, Russia started to rebuild its army in Sevastopol. During World War II, Germany bombed the capital, but Joseph Stalin decided to rebuild it. In 1944, Stalin deported about 200,000 Tartars, who were the native people to Crimea, to Siberia, calling them ethnic Muslim traitors to the USSR, and bringing in an ethnically Russian workforce to replace all those workers. After the fall of the Soviet Union, a treaty with Ukraine allowed Russia to keep its naval fleet in Sevastopol until 2042. However, this was not enough for Russia, so in 2014, Russia seized Crimea from Ukraine. This was an illegal move that violated the treaty. This sparked a war which displaced 2 million people and destroyed Crimea's infrastructure. I paraphrase this information from Alice Popovsky's article, Why Russia Wants Crimea, from History.com. What happened recently? March 16th marked the 6th anniversary of Russia officially annexing Crimea. In February of 2014, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych fled to Russia, and immediately thereafter, soldiers started to occupy Crimea. Vladimir Putin denied that these were Russian soldiers until weeks later. By March of 2014, Russian troops had secured all of the peninsula. On March 6th, Crimea voted to accede to Russia. On March 16th, Crimeans were given two choices: join Russia or return to the Crimean Constitution of 1992. Notice that neither of these options were rejoining Ukraine. The vote turned out that it said 83% of people voted, and 96% of the people that voted to join Russia. Given that 40% of Crimeans are actually Ukrainian, these numbers seemed very implausible. 2 months later, a leaked report from the Russian president's Human Rights Council put the turnout of the vote at only 30% of the population, and half of those people, maybe less, voted to join Russia. Putin ratified a treaty on March 21st to accede Crimea to Russia. This information was mostly paraphrased from Brookings. Official data compiled by the Russian state agencies shows that from the start of 2014 through 2016, Crimea experienced a net outflow of 83,000 individuals. Over 149,000 moved to the peninsula, while about 66,000 departed. Sevastopol, home to the Black Sea Fleet, is technically its own district apart from the rest of the peninsula because it's directly run by Moscow. This information was paraphrased from Brookings. Another migration statistic is that a large number of ethnic Ukrainians and Crimean Tartars, some put the total at 140,000, have left the peninsula since 2014. During the same period, some 250,000 people have moved from Russia to Crimea, says Brookings. The Crimean Peninsula population stood at 2.342 million on January 1st of 2014 and declined by about 5,000 to 2.337 million by the end of 2016, says the Eurasian Net. There are lots of push and pull factors after Russia took over, so I'll tell you our top two choices for each. The first push factor is that 140,000 of ethnic Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars had left the peninsula since 2014. Crimean Tatars complain about intimidation and oppression by Russians as one of the reasons for moving. Another push is economic because smaller businesses were suffering. Small businesses had suffered particularly with the decline of tourism, which used to account for 1/4 of Crimea's economy. And that was paraphrased from Brookings. Some pull factors is that Brookings says the inflow has included troops and sailors, as the Kremlin had bolstered the Russian military presence on the peninsula, deploying new submarines, surfacing, and combat aircrafts, among other things. This basically means that lots of people were moving from Russia to Crimea as troops and sailors for the military. Another pull is an economic reason, because Moscow had poured in more than $10 billion to direct subsidize major construction and infrastructure projects, such as highways and railroads that cross between Crimea and Russia, which was another reason that people wanted to move to Crimea to work on construction. That was paraphrased also from Brookings. This was clearly a very controversial issue. You can see this issue from two perspectives. The first is that the annexation was illegal and wrong. Many articles claim that Russian annexation of Crimea was akin to an invasion or conquest, not a rightful legal act. Brookings said, armed men began occupying key facilities and checkpoints on the Crimean Peninsula. Clearly professional soldiers by the way that they handled themselves and their weapons. They wore Russian combat fatigues, but had no insignia on them. President Vladimir Putin at first flatly denied that these were Russian soldiers, only later to admit that they were Russian soldiers. Clearly acquiring this territory was accomplished not by a diplomatic discussion, but by military force with troops that were able to take over the peninsula in a matter of weeks. They also claim that the Crimeans voted to join Russia. However, it's clear that these votes were at least tampered with. The second opinion that people have on the annexation was that it is rightful and successful. Most claim that that Russia has a historical claim to the land. Moscow maintains a historical claim to Crimea. The Russians colonized Crimea during the reign of Catherine the Great, and they founded Sevastopol, the peninsula's main port and largest city and capital. And they founded it to be the home port for the Russian Black Sea Fleet, says Brookings. And others find it impressive how Putin was able to get the Crimean Peninsula to quote-unquote agree to this annexation, regardless of the means. World Finance says Putin ended this meeting with a bold proclamation. We must start working on returning Crimea to Russia. A little over 3 weeks later, he'd achieved his goals, with both states signing a treaty of annexation of the Republic of Crimea to Russia. This source makes it a point to notice how much money Russia was pouring into Crimea, which was over $10 billion, used all for railways, buildings, and other infrastructure, noting that the economy seems to be doing very successful since Russia took over. World Finance says, in the 5 years that have passed since Crimea rejoined the Russian Federation, the peninsula's economy appears to have appears to be showing few ill effects. On the contrary, things are going better for them. Crimea grew faster than any other region in Russia. However, even the source can't deny that the statistics are not as they seem, and Crimea has not been doing well economically for Russia. The World Finance also said the peninsula's success, however, is a little misleading. Since 2014, Moscow has pumped huge sums of money into the Crimean economy, funding a large number of infrastructure projects. This expenditure has not only created a pretense of prosperity, it has also proved a monumental drain on Russia's finances. Overall, Tristan and I believe that this annexation was unjust because Russia violated its treaty with Ukraine. Thank you for listening.